All right, so a few weeks ago, my wife and my daughter were so nice to me. They cut the grass. In fact, they've done it several times, but the very first time, they were just being so incredibly kind, so incredibly thoughtful to take care of something that I frankly, I just didn't have time to do it. And so they did it and they told me, and it was awesome. And I was excited to come home and find like one less thing to do that evening, one less thing to do after I had a long day at work and really didn't want to do it. It was hot. It was just, I just was tired and I just wasn't in the mood to cut the grass. I get home and the first thing I see is the line that separates our yard from the neighbors. Now, the neighbors and I have never really talked about exactly where that line is. We don't really much care, but we sort of have an understanding. And it's this weird, like it almost curves a little bit. And it's one of those things where we were like, I just had a natural flow. And I knew if I started at one point and I looked to the next point that I was going to be, that was my line. And that would start my perfect lines in unison all the way across the lawn. And that was part of the joy of cutting the grass, right? Just to make these perfect lines that looked really nice. You could take a step back and go, it's done and it's wonderful and I love it. And although they were being super nice, I pull into the driveway and I look and I see that line and it's like doing this. It's all over the place. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And I found myself a little bit annoyed that frankly, I was like, I could have done better. You didn't do it my way. And I even walked my daughter out there. I said, this is the line, not that. Why did you cut over there? You needed to cut here. This is the line. Instead of thanking her and saying, thank you, you did a great job. I don't have to do it. Woohoo, who cares how it's done? As long as it's done, it's cut. Who cares? It's great. And her way was fine. The lines were straight and it looked good, but it wasn't my way. And, the same is true on the other side of it, right? I mean, my wife's not totally innocent here. The same is true. Okay, I've been doing laundry since I can remember. There was a time when my mom, when I was a kid, said, guess what? You're doing your own laundry. And I've done my own laundry. And I throw everything in. I throw a bunch of soap in and I just, whatever. I don't care. And I clean the clothes. And my wife has a very specific way of doing laundry. And that's okay. And she gets very annoyed at me when I just throw everything in a hamper and don't have any regard for what her process is. Because she likes it done her way. And I have very little regard for her way. No different than no one asked me how I want the lawn cut. And this is just kind of what we do, is we like things done our way. We really like to have things done the way we imagine they should be. And it's not limited to just the tasks around the house. It's parenting. It's life in general. It's how we do our jobs. It's just how we govern our lives. We think this is the way we're going to do it. And every married couple has this issue early on of just discovering you do it this way, I do it this way. How do we find a compromise in there? And that got me thinking. It got me thinking about faith and my relationship with God and when He calls us to do something great. When God puts a call on your life and says, hey, I need you to go and do this thing. I need you to go here. I need you to minister to these people. I need you to talk to this person. I'm going to put this person in your life because they need to hear about me and you can do that. And I need you to do that because that's why you're here. You're not here to live in a nice house and you're not here to have a nice car and you're not here to have a great job and you're not here to make a lot of money. And you're not here to take vacations. You're not here for any of those things. We are here to spread the gospel. We're here to do God's work. We're here to build His kingdom here on earth and bring that presence of heaven, that presence of God Himself in our world right here, right now. If the Spirit is residing in each and every one of us, then it's through us that God is communicating His truth to other people. And so if that's our job, if that's what we're supposed to do, it got me thinking, like, okay, if God's calling me to something, if God's calling you to something, then what does that look like when He says, what He tells through the prophet Isaiah, my ways are not your ways. My ways are higher than your ways. You don't do things like I do them. You don't really totally understand how I do things. I just need you to do as you're told. And it's funny because I tell my kids that all the time. You don't get to question why I'm telling you to do something. You don't get to do that. You just get to do what I tell you to do. That's what obedience is. But when it comes to our relationship with God, we don't like to do that. We don't like to do that at all. In fact, what we love to do is tell God, well, here's the thing. I've got this life that's super comfortable. I got this thing that I really like doing. I got this job that I like. I got this just cushy lifestyle and this house and the cars and the vacation, the toys and the friends and all the things that I got going on. I'm good. I don't need you meddling in my affairs. I don't need you telling me, hey, God, if someone comes and says, tell me about Jesus, I'm all in. I'm right there. I'll do it. Seek them out? Nah, maybe not. Maybe I won't do that. But when he actually calls us and says, hey, I've got something for you. I have a job for you to do. We often look at it with maybe contempt. Maybe we just sort of ignore it. Or maybe we manipulate the situation to convince ourselves that that's not really the voice of God. That maybe God isn't actually telling me the thing that he's telling me because it might make me uncomfortable. It might make me really have to risk the lifestyle that I have. And frankly, I don't know if I want to do that. But what if he does? What if he actually is calling you to something that is beyond what you think is normal? That's beyond what you consider to be your way of doing things. What would life look like if we put ourselves in a position to say, okay, God, I'm going to do whatever it is that you tell me to do, no matter how uncomfortable, no matter how crazy, no matter how outside the box it sounds. Because I don't know about you guys, but I think we live in a world that is increasingly in need of Jesus, increasingly in need of truth and the gospel and a different way of doing things. And going to church, just going to church, honestly, it's not cutting it. Guys, it's not. It is not cutting it in any way, shape, or form. It's a good start, and we need a community of believers, and we need to worship, and we need to hear the word, and we need to be fed. But after that is done, where are we going to do the thing that's uncomfortable, that's awkward, that's crazy, that's just completely outside the box because God has asked us to do that on a regular basis? Not the off, I went on a mission trip once. Those are great, but it's more than that. So I often talk about the idea of a Jesus-centered life, to take ourselves out of the center of our world and place Jesus in the center of our world and put ourselves behind Jesus so that we view everything through the lens of Jesus. So we look at our job, and we look at our toys, and we look at our stuff that we like to get, and we look at even our families and all the things that we have going on in our lives, our finances, all of it. We can look at and say, how do I see this through your lens? How do I use this for kingdom purposes? How do I understand this to be something that is for the kingdom's benefit, so that somebody else might know who Jesus is? That's how we should view this. So when God calls us, very simply, to step out of the circle and put him in the circle, what are we to do? Right? How do we actually do that? And that's really a lot of what this journey is about, because as I started to ask that question, I started to think to myself, gosh, I don't know that I know. I talk about this idea of being Jesus-centered all the time, and I looked at it and said, I'm not even sure I understand what that means, because to be perfectly honest, I was completely self-centered in every conceivable way. I wanted the amount of money, I wanted the job, I wanted the status, I wanted all the things. Even in the Christian world, even as a pastor or anything else, I wanted the status, and I wanted to be like the guy that went all over the place and spoke to millions of people, and I got mad when I didn't get the respect because I wanted it my way. And never once did I take a step back and go, okay, God, what do you have for me? Until recently. Now, It's still crazy and scary, and I don't totally understand it all. But I said to myself, if I'm going to talk about this, and I'm going to say that, like, hey, this is what you ought to do, then maybe I ought to experience it for myself and actually go through the pain that I say people should go through. Because it's real hard to say, hey, give up the house and give up this or give up that. It's like, and I'm not saying anybody should do that. That may not be what God's calling you to do. But if I felt God was calling me to do something and I ignored the call, how can I tell you to do the same thing? It doesn't make any sense. So here we are. I'm actually at a racetrack starting to get ready to do some of the things that we're going to be doing as race chaplains amongst the NASCAR Youth Series, to be able to minister to families and travel all over the country and do that. To be out of my comfort zone is going to be a journey, and it's going to be hard, and I'm not entirely sure exactly how it's all going to work out, but we're excited for it. And that's my challenge to you today, is think about, what is God calling you to? What comforts is he maybe asking you to relinquish and to give up? What awkward situation is he asking you to get involved in? Is he asking you to like talk to some coworker that you're like, I'm not talking to them, maybe it'll cost me my job? Is it worth your job if somebody's soul is saved? I don't know, maybe. Maybe you have something that you need to give away and you're just holding on to it too tight. I had a pastor friend tell me that, we were supposed to approach our lives like this. And I love this analogy. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I totally know. He's like, yeah, do that. I'm like, I know. He's like, no. He goes, you can approach it like this. This is easy. He goes, because if you're truly chasing after God like this, he's just going to pry your hand open. He's just going to be like, here, let me just get in there and let me just figure it out. And there, now I'm going to take it. And that's painful. So why make it more painful on ourselves? And I'm like, dude, that's incredible. Thank you. So my challenge for you today, and I know you've heard this before, is to live like this. Because our ways are not his. His ways are, in fact, higher. He knows so much more than we do. So why not give our lives up, live like this, put him in the center, and view everything through the lens of what Jesus has for your life?